because, yes, there are foreign people who would like to harm the United States, but if left to their own devices, they probably couldn't afford to rent a camel to get over here.
Right. Well, this is Snowden actually
are the people who are leading and ordering about people like Ed Snowden.
Well, Jim, Snowden actually addresses some of what you said there. He says that when this first began, the FISA program did mostly focus on foreigners, not non-Americans. But he says increasingly it was turned, that entire security apparatus, the spy grid, was turned against Americans and is now used domestically. And this is his quote. He says now that we gather more information. Where's that actual quote? More information from Americans than we do from the Russians. So, I mean, come on. This is a U.S. spy grid now.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, if you really stop and look at it and back off and view the big picture, what's very, very disturbing to me is that when I was a young man, if you spoke about the Constitution and the Republic and true liberty and freedom, you were considered a patriot, and you were considered a fine, upstanding American. Today, according to material that's been put out by the Obama administration and passed around to police departments and other law enforcement by the fusion centers, if you speak about the Constitution and if you support the freedom and liberty and criticize the government, you're some kind of a potential terrorist. I mean, where are we going, folks? This is worse than the McCarthy era.
Well, let's talk about that, because you have written about JFK extensively. In fact, you've researched the JFK assassination more than anyone, so you can actually give us a historical context of this. Can you compare this today to the Nixon-Watergate scandal? Can you give us a sense of scale of how much bigger and how much more dangerous this NSA spy scandal is compared to what Nixon did?
Well, yes, and again, because with Nixon and Watergate, you're just dealing with a corrupt president who was using the arm of the federal government to attack his political enemies. Today, they are attacking everybody, okay? And by the way, people should be cognizant of the fact that Watergate was a presidential assassination. All right. In fact, it was an extension of the Kennedy assassination. The big difference, of course, was that Kennedy was physically killed, while Nixon was just politically killed. And both of them were orchestrated. It's like one of the members of the infamous Warren Commission was bemoaning the fact, he said, we have to show the world that the United States is not just another banana republic.
Right.
Okay, where you can shoot the leader and take over. But unfortunately, folks, we are just another banana republic.
So, Jim, if
bigger and meaner and, with better weaponry.
Julian Assange even spoke to that recently. He talked about the catastrophic breakdown of law and order in the United States, and he's right about that. But give us this answer, Jim. If Nixon was forced to resign over the Watergate scandal, which was minuscule compared to what we're seeing today, what should be done with Obama today if we are a country of law? What should happen to him?
Well, several things should have happened long before now. Number one, I know everybody rolls their eyes and goes, oh, this is just some politicking, but I think the evidence is certainly strong enough to point out that he is not even constitutionally qualified to be president, that there should have been at some point a legitimate hearing. The Supreme Court has never ruled on his eligibility. They simply refused to look at it.
Right.
That's a starting point. Second thing would be grand juries, all right? And the main thing is, and the thing that I hope this could lead to, is impeachment proceedings. I mean, if we could impeach Bill Clinton because of a stain on a dress, surely we can impeach Obama over loss of liberty, loss of sovereignty, murdering people around the world, designating American citizens for assassination without trial. Come on.
I know. I mean, Bill Clinton was only stalking one woman, and Obama's stalking all women and men and everybody in the United States. Jim, are you up to take a few calls?
Sure.
All right, let's go to our callers who've been waiting patiently. Marcus in Texas. Marcus, you're on the air. Direct your question, please, to Jim.
Hello. Can you give me just a second to take my phone off the speaker?
Yeah, go for it, man. And while you're doing that, let me give out the web address of Jim Marrs. It is jimmars.com. That's Mars with 2 R's, okay? M-A-R-R-S. jimmars.com will get you information about Jim and his books and his research. Now, caller, Marcus, go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'm back. Jim, do you remember about 2,000 years ago, there was a man who was completely unselfish and gave himself just like Mr. Snowden?
Oh, yes, I do. In fact, there's been several people like that, and isn't it interesting how that the people who advocate tyranny and control and propagate fear and loathing, they seem to prosper and do well, but the people like the fellow you're talking about, plus about a dozen others I could name, who say, let's all get along, let's be peaceful, let's love our fellow man, and they tend to get assassinated or strung up in one way or another, don't they?
Yeah, and why?
Yes, sir.
Well, good question, caller, but let me ask this, too. Why do we now have apologists for all of this, Jim? We've got these, predictably, the liberals and the Democrats are out there running around on the mainstream media saying, oh, who cares that they're reading all our email and listening to all our phone calls? We can trust Obama. He's our savior. Yeah, it's insane.
That's right. Well, all I can picture is a middle-class German in the 1930s who said, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. What do I care if the government snoops on me and spies on me and launches wars all around the world, because I am not guilty. I am merely following my orders.
Exactly.
Come on, folks.
Exactly.
Smell the history.
Well, now, Rand Paul, we're going to play this video later. Rand Paul is now saying that he wants 10 million Americans to join in a class action lawsuit that he wants to take to the Supreme Court to challenge all of this. But let me ask you this, Jim. Even if the Supreme Court ruled that this was illegal and unconstitutional, this NSA spy system isn't going to go down voluntarily. They may say, oh, yeah, we agree not to spy on Americans anymore. Yeah, wink, wink, cross your fingers behind your back. I mean, come on, it's a joke. They're going to do whatever they want because they are a runaway criminal gang that recognizes no boundaries and no law. How do we ever stop this, Jim?
Well, for one thing we can do, I'll tell you one little trick I've been doing just to thwart the system because, as I said in the beginning, this is nothing new. It's new that somebody on the inside has come forward and says, yes, we're doing all this, as opposed to the denials by both government and the communications companies. But what we know they've been doing for a long time with their supercomputers is recording everything that goes, emails and telephone calls and everything else, and then it's run through a filter, see? And if you say certain words like Osama bin Laden or nuclear bomb or Iraq, Afghanistan, then it flags it, and then people will start listening to find out that what you're saying. So what we do is we overload the system. Every time you call up your mom, you say, hey, Mom, Osama bin Laden sends a nuclear bomb to you to see if you've had any drones come over, and you throw in every word you can think of before you start your conversation, and then you can overload them.
That's actually a really good strategy. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's the noise strategy, because if you think about it, this guy Snowden who came forward, he's just one of probably thousands of analysts who, many of which are probably in their 20s, who are sitting around at these desks just analyzing and listening to people's phone calls that have been flagged by the system. So you're right. If you can seed all of these phone calls with these kinds of words, and even in your emails and so on, then, yeah, they're going to flag you, but they're going to waste all their time listening to nonsense.
Exactly. And, of course, then there are those who say, well, you're going to harm our national security. Well,
give me a break.
If you go back and actually look at the terrorist attacks that we've had in this country, beginning with 9/11, you're going to find that every one of them involves a CIA or FBI informant. Right. In other words, it's all agents provocateur.
Yeah.
They've all been created, folks,
They're the ones setting it up so they have an excuse to spy on us, and then they can
say... It's the oldest trick in the book.
Yes.
I mean, you go back to the
Reichstag,
Nazis. They set fire to the Reichstag, to their parliament building, and then blamed it on communist terrorists and began to eradicate the Communist Party in Germany. It's the oldest trick in the book.
And they always claim they need more power. They need to listen to more people. Jay Leno, here's his quote. Quote, "We wanted a president that listens to all Americans. Now we have one." Good for you, Jay. Let's take another caller. Ryan in Minnesota. Ryan, you're on the Alex Jones Show with Jim Mars and Mike Adams. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yes, hi. It's nice to be both of you today. I'm happy to see that this information has finally been made public. Most of us in the know probably already assumed it was taking place, but the actual breadth and depth of the information that they have and can store is just, crazy.
Mind-boggling, yeah.
I'm wondering what's next. If we're not on our computer or at home or have a cell phone on us, are they going to make us wear some kind of microphone and camera? Because we don't want to be away from technology that could possibly track and record everything we're saying.
Well, check this out. I saw a camera being announced. It's some kind of camera that takes you clip it onto your shirt, and it takes a photo of your entire life. It takes a photo every 60 seconds of everything you do all day long, and then it uploads it to the cloud.
I wouldn't doubt it, and it might be mandatory here in the future. Who knows?
Good point. They might say, "Oh, you don't get Obamacare, you don't get health care unless you wear all this surveillance equipment." Yeah, but go ahead with your question.
You don't have to wear anything anyway, guys, because if you'll think about it, every time you pull up at a stoplight or walk up to a corner, there's cameras, and I'm sure there's no big technical problem to put listening devices there too.
Well, they've got them in the lamppost. Remember that story from I don't know, a year ago or something here on InfoWars? The street lights are actually fitted with microphones in some places to listen to you. Oh, but wait, that's a conspiracy theory. No one's listening to you. But go ahead with your question, though, caller.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how further could they possibly erode what we have left of the Fourth Amendment? What else can they, besides, stopping everybody when they drive down the road for no reason?
They will take all you give them, all right? And we have been given. It's time to say that's it. No more.
And the answer to that too, Ryan, is that they'll have mind reading technology. They will literally read your mind, and they'll put in pre-crime. It's just like that movie. What was it called with Tom Cruise? Minority Report. Yeah, that movie. It could become a reality. That's where they want to go. They want to read your mind. But great call, Ryan. Any further comments on that, Jim, before we go to the next call?
Yeah, quickly. Have you ever heard of a yottabyte?
No.
Okay. They are building, the National Security Agency is in the process of completing a huge compound, $2 billion compound in Utah that is 1/3 larger than the U.S. Capitol to store all forms of communication. So in other words, they're not only listening, they're storing it all away, and they're going up to a yottabyte, okay? A yottabyte? What's that? Okay, well, you already know about gigabytes. That's the most commonly used unit for computer hard disk storage. And a petabyte, that's 1,000 petabytes equals an exabyte, and 1,000 exabytes equals a zettabyte, and 1,000 zettabytes equals a yottabyte. In other words, a yottabyte it holds, 1 quadrillion gigabytes, and the average household computer holds about 200 gigabytes.
Right.
So they are now putting in the capacity to not only listen, but to store all of the information on everybody.
Well, yeah. What do you think they're going to use this for? Are they going to use this to help uplift humanity?
Line their pockets by selling it to commercial enterprises, so they can pinpoint your marketing needs and pinpoint you for advertising, and then they'll figure out ways to use that for psychological warfare operations, so that they can get you to believing and in just about anything they want you to believe in.
It's incredible. This is massive slavery. This is so far beyond 1984. This is Orwellian to the extreme. Let's go to another caller to get some more comments. Bill from Philadelphia. Bill, you're on the air with Jim Mars. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Mike. Hi, Jim. I just wanted to make a comment, and then you guys can add to it what you see fit. People in this country have to stop having the opinion that if I'm doing nothing wrong, then what does it matter? Well, it does matter, because there's a dossier being created on every American in this country. What I have done to try to limit my exposure is cash as much as possible, unplug the cable box.
Hey, Bill, stay with us. Will you stay on the line? We got to go to break, but I want to get more of your tips on the other side of this break. So just stay with us. We'll continue with you right here on the Alex Jones Show. You're going to learn tips how to protect yourself from the NSA spy grid. The clouds. Welcome to NPR, where you'll never hear real news, just stuff to make you relax and enjoy your slave cage. All right, sorry, I'm goofing around a little bit. Had a little bit too much chocolate today. Jim Mars continues with us. This is the Alex Jones Show. No, this is not NPR. You're tuning in to The Truth Radio, actually the alternative media, which is now the new mainstream media, since the alternative media likes to pretend none of this exists. They told Alex years ago that he was crazy to say the NSA was listening to your phone calls and reading your emails. Turns out he was right all along, once again. And another person who was right is, of course, Jim Mars, who continues with us as a guest in this segment. Jim, continuing with this story, what do you think is going to happen to the whistleblower, Ed Snowden? Does he die within weeks or days? What happens?
No, they're a little smarter than that. If he should suddenly get run over tomorrow, I think everybody in the whole world would go, aha, so no, that's not going to help their cause any. No, they'll come out with some expert or some psychiatrist, some psychologist, and they'll all start giving that psychobabble and try to say, well, he's just delusional and he doesn't know what he's talking about. But the problem is he does know what he's talking about. And as I said before, in fact, as we said at the beginning of the show, he's basically only telling us what we already knew to be true. But you actually kind of stole some of my thunder there, because big point I was going to make is that everyone who's been pointed to and called a conspiracy theorist, and that's yourself, Mike Adams, that's Alex Jones, that's myself, a lot of others, turns out, gee, we're right. Okay?
Yeah.
In fact, that's the only thing that keeps my sanity, because sometimes I try to catch myself up and go, hey, Mars, maybe you're just making stuff up. Maybe you're just looking at things the wrong way. Maybe you are just a conspiracy theorist. So I get real objective, and I sit back and I look at all of the evidence and all of the facts and all the information I have, and I go, no.
It's all true.
The same thing I'm sure that you've done, Mike.
Yeah, in fact, we have a caller on this very point, Gary from New Mexico. Gary, welcome to the show. You have comments about Alex mentioning all this years ago, I understand?
Actually, yes, Jim and Mike, you guys have in your archives a video from Bill Benny. The article was Adon Salazar, August 28, 2012. And when I called in, I mentioned that Bill Benny knows if you can connect the dots to Operation Thin Thread, Trailblazer, and now what he came out with, Alex, in Stellar Wind, and Jim said it exactly. You can connect the dots to Snowden, to Stellar Wind, to the data center in Utah.
Well, yeah, all the puzzle pieces are all coming together now. We see what's happening. Culture of intimidation with the IRS, the Department of Justice, surveilling journalists, and now all this comes out with the NSA. Jim, we've only got about 30 seconds in this segment. Your comments.
Yeah, well, there's no justice in the Justice Department, and there's no intelligence in the intelligence communities. It's time for the people to start taking the power back to themselves and trying to turn the United States of America back into a freedom-loving republic.
Well said, Jim, and we're going to go to break here shortly, but we're going to continue on the other side of that with 5 more minutes of Jim Mars and his comments on the breaking NSA scandal, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Well, the NSA spy grid scandal has exploded onto the global scene. Now people are realizing their government has been lying to them and spying on them in ways they never could have imagined before. It's so devastating to the credibility of the government that now it has a lot of people asking, is it time for a citizens' revolt against this big brother expansion of government power? And continuing in our last segment with author Jim Marrs of jimmars.com, that's 2 R's on the Mars, or 2 R's on Mars. Jim is going to give us some more information on why this matters. So, Jim, we were just talking about what you think might happen to Snowden. Apparently, we're being told that he is now missing in Hong Kong and faces the fear of extradition there, might be trying to sneak his way over to Iceland. That's a long haul, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a long haul. Besides that, hey, the world, we are indeed in the global village today. You can't get away from it. He went to Hong Kong because Hong Kong, although now part of China, does have a certain amount of autonomy. Of course, I remember visiting in Tibet, and they were told there they had some autonomy, and then as soon as they tried to exercise their autonomy, the Chinese swooped down and killed a bunch of them and straightened them out. But here's the thing. There is no more real nations, okay, because at the very top of the power pyramid in China even, you find the very same people. I mean, they practically own the United States. They were just recently given entree to the Federal Reserves, our reserves. They have drawing rights like everybody else. They're members of the G20 that's all being administered through the old Bank of International Settlements, the World Bank, and at the very top, it's the same people controlling both. But this gives us an opportunity because they want to continue to keep the facade going that somehow we're enemies with China, see? So in China, they can report pretty openly about all the corruption and the bad stuff going on in America, while in America, we can report on the bad stuff going on in China, but in either country, you can't report on what's happening in that country because they have control over the media.
That's right.
What you do is you start listening to the Chinese sources to find out what's happening here, and the Chinese need to start listening to U.S. media to find out what's happening over there. It's an oddball thing, but I think you'll agree with me that at the top, the leadership is the same.
Absolutely. They're all interested in total domination over the people. And if you look at what Snowden gave as his justification for why he stepped forward, he was saying that he did not want to live in a country where this kind of surveillance is happening on a routine basis. He actually had some morals and some ethics. He was a Ron Paul supporter.
Right.
He saw what was going on, and he decided to step forward, even knowing, because he worked for the CIA, knowing that they would try to kill him.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned Ron Paul. I am probably one of the few people who have actually and legally voted for Ron Paul for President of the United States. That was in 1988 when he ran as the candidate for the Libertarian Party. And all I got to do is say this. Going all the way back into the 80s, Ron Paul was the only man who's shown any backbone, who spoke truth, who spoke to truth, who tried to tell us what's going on, and tried to tell us here's what you could do about it. And he's always ended up being, you know, tail last and oh, just forget him and never mind about him and blah, blah, blah. Why do we continue to fall for the media hype of the worst people in the whole world? And when we finally get somebody that's got some sense and actually probably has the best interest of everyone at heart, and of course he's not very dynamic because he looks like and acts like just kind of an old country doctor.
Well,
But of course, oops, wait a minute, he is just an old country doctor. The very type of person that we
Jim, we gotta
need in a leadership
we got to let
position.
you go. We're out of time on this segment, but great insights. And everybody, I want you to encourage you to check out Jim Marrs' website and also his book, Our Occulted History. Thank you, Jim, for joining us on The Alex Jones Show today. We'll continue right after this break.